welcome back to my channel. Today I am making Goddess of the Sea bag by Needle and Anchor Designs. This I have modified slightly. I did a different strap because I didn't have the cool O-rings to do it. And I have no foam in here. But apart from that, I think it's pretty much like the pattern. It's got these really cool little like side mini pockets on both sides of the gusset. Which is fun. I've got a zipper pocket on the inside and a slip pocket on the other side. It closes with a magnet, and obviously it's very cool for embroidery. So if you'd like to see how I've made this, stay tuned. Alrighty, so today I like to start with the side bits, partially because this is probably the trickiest part. So if you're not tuning in for the whole video, you can watch the cool bit. So you're going to need your zipper panel pieces. So I'm using vinyl for the outside, so I haven't interfaced those. And then the last of my pink waterproof lining. And then I've also got my zipper tabs here as well. So these are just squares. The width of the zipper tape is the size of the zipper tab. So I'm just going to put right sides up for the lining. Then the zipper right side up, and then the top one right sides down to make a zipper sandwich. And then I'm just going to stitch along the edge. Now if these slip around too much for you, grab some double-sided tape or some clips. Wonder clips would also work for this. And I'm going to back stitch at both ends. And then I'm going to grab my other one and do the same thing. Zipper sandwich, and under we go. And then I'm going to chop off the first one. And then I'm going to pull these up and then top stitch these through all the layers to hold the tab upwards. Like that. And I'm going to snip off the other one and do the same thing. So this chain sewing is just saving me a little bit of time. That's all it's really doing. All right. My thread's giving me some grief. No shocker there. I've woke up with a little bit of a sore throat today, so if I cough a lot, I apologize now, but I can't really help it. Okay. So we're going to take one of our lining pieces. Now, if you're using a printed fabric, you need the top to be at the end where the zipper tab is. So we're going to line that right sides up. And then if you want to, you can grab some wonder clips and clip them along the edge. Like so. I'm just going to do, I don't know, 3. Like that. And then we're going to take our exterior piece and put that right sides down. So we're just making another zipper sandwich along a different edge. That's pretty much all that's going on there. And if you set up the other zipper one as well, then you can chain stitch these. Because chain stitches saves time and money. Because you use less thread, you're doing less trimming of ends. So again, right sides down. Now this vinyl I'm using is the last of the stuff I got from Spotlight. Because it's a stark white, whereas the white that I get from my supplier is more of like a soft white. It's not as white. This is a bright white and I liked it for the design. So I'm going to stitch and then I'm going to back stitch. And then pretty much the edge of my foot is running next to the zipper tape. Like that. And then we're going to back stitch. And then before I cut it off, I'm going to trim these tails. Then I'm going to spin it round and pull both the lining and the top back. And then I'm going to top stitch with a longer stitch length, 1/8 of an inch from the seam we just created. Now I use contrasting thread because I thought it would look cool. But if you're scared of top stitching, do a matching thread and then it won't be so intense. I also was going to chain stitch that and clearly I didn't, but that's okay. So back to adjoining stitch length. Back stitch, swivel. Now, if you don't want to switch up and down between joining length and decorative stitch, top stitch length, you can just sew them all and then top stitch it at the end. But again, I find this way quicker. But if you don't like having to change your thread or your top stitch size, or if you've got an industrial like me and you can never get it quite the same, do it all at the end. So then we're going to grab this and we're going to do the same to the other side. So again, 3 clips just kind of helps hold everything in place so it doesn't flop around. And then this time I'm going to stitch from bottom to top so that the bulk of the fabric is outside of my machine. Back to adjoining stitch length, and I've run out of bobbin thread. That's okay, these things happen. I knew this was coming, so I have already done a new bobbin because that one was nearly empty when I started. But that's no reason not to use it. Every time I pick up a bobbin, I accidentally unwind a whole bunch. Alright, one full rotation will pull out your bobbin thread and then we can continue. Back stitch. Now I'm going to leave the needle up because there's no extra zipper tape at this end. And then I'm just going to pull them both back, switch it to a top stitch, and off we go. And then back stitch at the end. One more side. So 1, 2, and 3, and then this one on top like a sandwich. Back stitch. Back stitch at the other end. Crank your decorative stitch length up. Trim these somewhere in there. There we go. Swivel. Pull back the lining and the top. And then top stitch we go. Now you'll notice in some videos I pull out the lining and some of them we don't stitch over it. We don't stitch over it when it's going to be in the corners because it'll tuck, but we are stitching over it now because this isn't about to be one solid flat piece. So we need to grab 2 of our funky shaped ones, which is the zipper panel lining and the gusset. This is basically the gusset piece. Leave those 2 there for later because we're doing this first. Now, you want to line up the top center with where your zipper tab top is. And I'm going to just clip that there with 3 clips because we all know how I feel about that. And then before we go any further, we're going to put our zipper pulls on. So I'm going to flip it over, crack the zip. And I only do it a little bit. If it's too open, it gets annoying. Right, that is about 1 tooth out. See how one side's slightly bumpier than the other? So I'm going to take it off and I'm going to do it again. Because we can't just adjust it at the other end. There's a zipper tab. Whoops. So these are the rose gold smooth criminal zips. I named them that because I think I'm funny and I was listening to Michael Jackson at the time. Whatever works. Okay. That's better. So I'm going to zip it all the way up so it's out of the way. And then we're going to flip this over. And there's not really a lot of clipping we can do, but I am going to grab some of my alligator clips so that I can at least line up the center bottom like so. So they only just grab, but it'll be enough like that. So we're going to do the same to the other one. Really need to singe this zipper. Crack the zip. Also, don't burn your hands when you've melted the zipper. Sometimes it's still quite hot. I did feel the heat on that, but my hands are getting used to it because I do it all the time. But I'd like to warn you about it because it's not super pleasant. Right, zipper is on. So now we're going to put right sides together from the back. And we're going to clip this down. We don't want to lose any height from the zipper tab. So that's why we start at that end. And then we're going to line up the center at the zipper at this end. And then just grab a couple round like that. That's going to hold it in place. And now I'm just going to base the entire edge of the zipper panel. So I'm just going to go, it doesn't really matter what stitch length you're on, and I'm just doing it really close to the edge so that we won't see these stitches later. But by stitching it before we cut it, everything's definitely going to line up and not move around while we're trying to stitch it. Stitch first, then cut. Make sure that the zipper is out of the way when you get closer to the top. You don't want to accidentally hit it with your needle. You will snap your needle, bend it, something dramatic. It's always something dramatic. Right. So this is now what we've got. It looks fabulous. So when you open it, everything should look lovely on the inside. That's what we care about the most. So then from the back, I'm just going to take my Class A scissors because they like the bulk. And now, because I'm cutting over zipper, I know I have zipper scissors, but if you are doing this kind of a thing, you want to cut the zipper tape with the most backest part of your scissors. And I know that sentence is terrible, but you understand what I mean. So if it does happen to make a dull spot on your scissors, at least it's at the back and not at the front. And then we're just going to cut all the way around so that this piece is now the same size as the lining. Curve out that top so it looks fabulous. And voila. So now it's back to the proper size, but we've now got this really cool little like hidey hole. Now I'm just going to zip that up about halfway because I don't want the zipper problem at the top again. We can pop that one aside. That is now done. I also don't have the instructions with me today, so if I build it a little bit different, don't shoot me. I read the instructions. Well, I briefed over them. I feel like that counts. But like the other day, there are more than one way to make a bag sometimes. No instructions are wrong either. Well, as a general rule. Just because somebody builds something a different way to me doesn't mean they're wrong. I just tend to build my bags all in the same fashion, but there are different ways to do it. Needle down. And back stitch when we get back to the start. And then again, we're going to take off all of this excess. Now this might seem wasteful, but I genuinely believe that this is the easiest way to do it. You could maybe take off another 1/4 inch if you were super worried. But I definitely agree in the way that I'm doing this. This is fabulous. Right. And it's also a good hack that you could do to any bag. Very cool. Right. Zip it down about halfway and set them aside. Now we're going to do the front, which I know you've seen at the start of this video, but for me, you haven't seen it yet. So this is an embroidery design from Urban Threads. I don't remember what number it is. I renamed them. So what I've done, or what I tried to do when designing this, was I looked at the main fabric and it had some red, which is why there's like the darker red on the pink. This was kind of the closest I could get it. I could have maybe done like some pastels, but that's just not really my style. So that's why I didn't. So this is what it's going to look like. So we're going to put right sides together, put our tails behind us. Now again, if you're new to bag making or if you're worried it's going to slip, we just pop some clips on. It's a straight edge, so you probably don't need too many. And then, I heard that. That was going to give me grief backstitching, so instead I lifted it up and flipped it. That went back through the first stitches, so I didn't have to backstitch. Then it can't give me grief. Then we're going to do the same to this one. So I have cut it so that the white versus the print switches from front to back. So one time it's on the right, one time it's on the left. I chose to do that by cutting one of each mirrored. It's also a little bit of a lazy way because as long as you cut one of each mirrored, it'll be fine. But you can actually make it so that the print is always on the left. But whatever. Right. So now that I've done that, I am going to want to top stitch that. So I'm going to open this seam out flat so that it's not more bulky on one side than the other. If you have it more bulky on one side than the other, what you'll find is that your foot tends to not want to stay where it's being told to stay. I've played that game many a time. So again, I'm going up to my decorative stitch length. And I'm going to stitch down each side in the center. Then I'm just going to come around, go up the other side. Now this design, I did cut it very close, but we're okay. I didn't stitch through any of that design. It's just, you know, really, really close. That came out cool. So we're going to do the same to this one. So again, you want to split open this seam, like so. If you've got a roller or, I don't know, something you can score the edge with, I happen to have. This is getting a little bit old now. I need a new one. But it's like a scraper for doing stickers and stuff. I got it from Bunnings at like $2 or whatever. And you can just score it and it helps to open it up a little bit more. Otherwise, you can just press it like I did with the first one. Whatever's. Float your boat, really? Stitching down, I'm stitching off, swiveling around, pulling it over. Sometimes if it doesn't want to move over, you'll have to do a single stitch like I did before. And then back stitch. Now you can start at the top or the bottom for that, but my top stitches are so minimal that they actually won't pop out when we do our final top stitch. So that's good. Okie dokie. That's the outside of the bag. See, here they're opposite. When you do it this way, the white's here. So, I mean, you can design that any way you like. You could do it all in vinyl. You could do it without the seam down the center, but I do like the seam. Gives a nice little accent. All right, so let's bring out back our gusset pieces. And we're also going to want our base. Ooh. So, I have got my logo on the bottom. So we are going to right sides together. Obviously the wide bit, which is the bottom of our gusset, not where the zipper tab is. That's where we're going to clip it. Now again, you don't have to clip it. I'm not sure why I've decided I'm clipping everything today. I'm just feeling it, I guess. Right, so we're going to stitch. We're going to back stitch. Whoa, I just snapped my thread. Sometimes when that happens, it's not actually your fault. It's just a weak point in the thread. I find I've been having a few of those with my embroidery thread. I actually had to fight this design quite a lot with my embroidery machine. It did not want to be my friend. So when I stitch this, I use, so with the embroidery, because I know you guys are going to ask, so I'm just going to preemptively tell you, I used a ballpoint needle in size 90. And I had the machine slowed down to 350, which is as slow as it'll go. Now the reason I had it slowed down so much is because my machine doesn't like the spotlight vinyl. I don't know why, it just doesn't like it. So I had to slow the machine down so that it wouldn't keep snapping the thread every 7 seconds. The back stitch at both ends. Now we're going to top stitch this, and I think I want them on the base side. Yes, I do. So we're going to top stitch over the base part. And I haven't cut off this thread. See this bobbin thread? It's just wrapped itself around. It's my fault, but still. So, back up to a decorative stitch length. Now we're going to go over this slowly because, and we're going to roll this over. I'm just going to fold it in half without creasing. We don't want to crease it in half, but we're just folding it so it's not going to keep hitting over here because that will distort our top stitch. So I'm just going to hold it down like that as I stitch. And I'm going to go slowly because this is relatively thick now because of the stabilizer. I put the stabilizer all the way across so that the stabilizer will now be caught in all the seams. No particular reason except that I'm not putting bag feet. Otherwise the bag feet help secure the stuff. But I don't have rose gold bag feet yet. From memory, they're on their way, but I didn't have any deliveries today, so not today. And I really wanted to make this bag because I think it's going to be fabulous. Now, if you decide you've made this bag and you really, really want bag feet once you finish, all you really have to do is unpick the zipper pocket on the inside that we haven't made yet and put the feet in that way. It wouldn't be hard to do. If a week later you went, oh, I want bag feet. These things can be done. Right, so there we go. And if mine show up before I sell this bag, I might even do a video on it. So that's now the outside. Now I've already found the center of my base for when I was doing the embroidery design. So I don't need to find that again. And the center of the base of the exterior is where the join is. Funny about that. So I'm going to put those two right sides together and we're going to clip it right there. And then we're going to move along. I'm going to do 3. I always do 3 before I start messing with stuff. And then we're going to bend it so it's a 3D object and continue clipping. And so this edge should line up with this top edge there. That is the way the bag is designed. So you can also clip from the top down if that suits you better. And you can see I'm holding it up. I'm not trying to have it flat. You will never get it to sit well if you're holding it flat the whole time. You have to hold it how the bag will finish up, which is as a curve. So I only had to take off one of my clips here to get the curve to sit in better. And then I'm going to come to this other side. And we're going to do this side. And you know what I haven't done? I haven't made the clips face the gusset, which I should have because we always sew with the gusset right sides up. But that's okay. I can do it this side. It just makes them easier to pull off as you are stitching. And I can do it more as like a continuous thing. Alright, so again, I'm going to sit this here. We're going to line up this curve. Now, to get this final curve, I'm going to push it with my fingers and I'm going to hold it so that my thumbs are curving round. And that way, you won't get any pinches where you're going to clip it. Ta-da! So, gusset side up, and I'm going to go back to a joining stitch length. I'm going to start here, we're going to stitch, we're going to back stitch. That was probably too many back stitches. We're all guilty of it, it happens sometimes. To be honest, I did the extra forward stitches so that my back stitch wouldn't give me grief. Now, as we get to this corner, you kind of want to push it flat-ish. Obviously, you won't get it perfectly flat. It's a curve. But we're trying to eliminate any of the pleated parts in the seam that we're sewing. So by pushing it away, it's going to be flatter where we're stitching. I just dropped the clip. Always dropping something. Right, so I'm trying very, very hard not to get any kind of tucks or anything in amongst this. So I'm just maneuvering this around. Now, if you're not using waterproof canvas for your lining, make sure you only use like a medium woven for these. You don't want it too stiff or that will be a very, very thick seam for you. Cool. Once that's done, I'm now going to trim off this excess. You could use your zigzag scissors if you want to, but because it's thick for me, I am not, because they won't do much. When the seam's too thick, the zigzag scissors do not love me. Alright, so we're just going to chop off all of that. And I'm going to chop off the excess at the top. And those tails. And then the excess at the top on the other side as well. And that'll be easier for top stitching later. And then push all of that into the bin. Handy little thing I've got going on is at the end of this table, I have literally got the bin. So it sits right up there so I can just push everything off the table and it goes into the bin. Sometimes I miss, not gonna lie. But that's usually like the floaty bits like thread. You push them and then they float and miss the bin. All in all, it's a pretty good system though. Alright, so this time I'm going to make sure all of my clips face the gusset because I'm consciously thinking about it now. So I'm going to clip the bottom straight bit and then I'm going to come up to the sides. Now, if you wanted to, you could add foam here to make it even more sturdy. But I kind of like the idea of a not super thick bag. I don't know, it depends on how you want your bag. I don't necessarily want it super floppy, but I also don't want it super thick. So I don't want to put the foam. But you quite easily could. You would have just put it on before we started stitching. And your foam, I would make it the size of the lining panel because that would work just fine. Now, corners always have more clips than straights because you're trying to hold more bits to a curve. I don't know. There's just always more in the corners. Even though this is still a curve, this is like a gentle curve, whereas this one here is a lot tighter, so it requires more clips. Alright. So I'm getting closer to the corner. So you want to clip all the straight bits, and then I'm going to use my thumbs to push that through all the curve to make it sit where I want it to sit without having lumps. Like that. So see, my bag will stand up. It's just the front and back will be a little bit floppy. But I've still got to put lining in that as well. So that'll give it another little bit of extra something. So it will stand up. It just won't be firmly at attention, I guess is the best way to look at that. So I'm going to stitch. I'm going to back stitch. I'm using the mark on my plate that I got from eBay. This is the best idea ever. If you can't get a plate or you can't afford one, that's fine. Some things you can do instead would be to mark your 1/2 inch with either some masking tape or a permanent marker. Or if you've got like a Dremel drill, you could drill, like score a line into the metal. Or you could take it to your local metal fabricator and they can probably do something similar. And then technically you wouldn't need to buy a new plate. I used to use permanent marker, but I did find that after several bags you'd have to reapply it because it does come off. So that's why I ended up buying one, because I got sick of having to redraw it all the time. But it did serve me for a good, 4 years before I upgraded. And a lot of the stores, you don't have to get a generic one like mine. Mine's like a no-name plate. You can actually go and get one that is specifically designed for your machine. Alright, we're just looking in to check our curves. I'm pretty happy with that. So we are going to chop off the excess. Like that. And then again on this one, and I've literally got it leaning on my shoulder right now. Makes it a little bit easier. And again, I'm using these scissors because it's all quite thick. And I'm also cutting off the excess at the top for our final top stitch. This is especially important if you're on a domestic machine because you don't want all that extra bulk. Now, I've obviously used vinyl. This bag can be made without vinyl if you wanted to. You could have just used like 2 fabrics, or you could have used the same fabric and just had the cool seam in the middle. Alright, let's make our zipper gusset, our lining gusset, sorry. So I'm going to take the last two of the gusset pieces and the lining base. Now again, I don't have interfacing on these because it's the waterproof canvas. Unfortunately, I cannot get this color at the moment. They discontinued it from my supplier, but I am working on sourcing some others. I have recently managed to source some navy and yellow. It's all just a big waiting game for me. Okay. Right sides together. Stitch the other side. That was the easy bit. That's why we did this now. But before we go stitching our lining pieces to it, we might want to put in all of our pockets. So I'm doing the slip pocket that the pattern has, which is this one. So I've done one piece in my exterior printed fabric, and I've just put a woven fusible on the back, and then the piece that's going to be like on the inside of the slip pocket is just the waterproof canvas. I did that because I wanted a little bit of the accent on the inside of the bag, and this is a really cool way to get it. So, I don't remember what kind of pocket this is. I know it's a slip pocket, but there's so many ways to do a slip pocket. Let me have a look. Okay, cool. So we're just going to, for the purposes of today, I am just going to stitch the two long sides. I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam so I get more pocket. I'm not sure if the pattern says that or a different seam allowance, but I'm using 1/4 inch on both edges, and that will give me a slightly taller pocket than if I did a bigger seam allowance. Another cool thing, if you don't want one of these plates or if you can't source one for your machine, another really cool thing is these magnets. So this is literally just got a magnet on the back, and what you would do is you'd line it up against, so you'd measure it out, and then you'd put this magnet here, and so the fabric literally just butts up against it, and you can just glide through. I did use this for a while as well. It was just magnetized to my heat press because I obviously don't use it anymore. So I'm going to stick my hand in and pull it through. Now I'm just doing a straight flat slip pocket. If you were going to do it where it's got like the raised pockets, you would have to sew the sides and then turn it through a small hole that you leave. But I'm doing it this way because, I don't know, I feel like it. So I'm just going to roll out that seam with my fingers and then finger press it. If you don't want to finger press it, you can also use your little scorecard thing. Another thing that will work is like an old credit card, or, you know, when you join every club in the planet and they give you a card, you could use one of them. Like that. And then I'm going to do the same to the top. You could also iron it. Not going to lie, probably iron's the best bet. But I don't have an iron set up, and I'm not setting up an iron right now for this one little seam. Because the back of it is waterproof canvas, so it gets a nice crease in it anyway. So now it's creased, I'm going to take the top, and I'm going to top stitch along the top edge at 1/8 of an inch with a longer decorative stitch length. So it's going to look pretty. Literally why. And it's going to hold that crease I just made, so that your pocket doesn't like flop and sag, because you don't really want to be seeing your lining bit on the outside if you can help it. So we're just going to stitch the top like that, and then I'm going to take one of my lining main pockets and see how it reaches from edge to edge. I feel like that's a sign. So I'm going to put it there. I'm just eyeballing it, not going to lie, and I'm going to top stitch along the bottom. And that's going to stitch it to the pocket. Lining. Not pocket. Stitching the pocket to the lining. That's the words I wanted. And then when I get to this edge, just to kind of secure it, I'm going to go up the side like that and back stitch. And then I can come and do the same to this side, just so it doesn't shift. Trim off all of the tails. And then, do I want half? Or do I want, oh, I don't know. I might do 2/3 and 1/3. And then that way, if you've got a mini wallet, the mini wallet could go on one side and your phone could go on the other. And that's how I'm working that out. I use my fingers to measure a lot because it's personal preference with your slip pockets. You could have done it in half, thirds, 2/3 and 1/3. You could literally get your phone, measure a pocket perfect for your phone. Depends on what you carry in your bag. Because I'm selling this one, I'm winging it, but I would get like, I could either put my phone in here and then my wallet in there, depending on the size, or, you know, hold other things. So that's one piece. Then we're going to go, I have cut a Tory Pocket with the Tory Pocket template. So I've already got the thing measured, but I am still going to fold it in half to insert that crease because it will help. So I'm going to grab my other lining piece. Now, the side that we haven't drawn on goes to the top. And if you've used a print, what you want is when you fold this in half, you want the side you didn't draw on to be facing right way up. So when you zipper open the pocket, you're looking at the print in the right direction. And so it will be upside down on the wall where we're stitching it. Just so you all know. Now I'm moving this pocket down a little bit further than I normally would because we still need to insert our magnet. And because this is somewhat slippery, it has its moments anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some Wonder Clips to hold it in place. Now I'm only going to stitch the two long edges of the zipper rectangle that we drew because I find this easier. You can stitch the whole way around, but I've recently discovered that I like this way much, much more. Now this might seem like a low zipper pocket to you, but I've still got seam allowance, top stitching, and magnet. So I don't want to be too close to the top with the zipper pocket, or it's going to be awkward. Now, if you want to, you could also add a vinyl accent around this, which would look super cute in the bag. I'm not doing that, but it could look really cool. So I'm just trimming off all my tails. I can now take my clips off and grab some scissors. These are my Fiskars spring-loaded scissors. So I'm going to fold it in half and just make a clip. And so then we're still going to triangle out the corners the way we always would. There's just no end stop. So you just want to stop at the edge of the stitches. That's all. It's the only difference. But by not having those ends stitched, you'll find that it's easier to get the pocket to sit flat. You got less fighting with it. So, because this is waterproof canvas, I'm going to fold this up and finger press that, of which I do even if it's not. But usually you have to iron it if it's cotton. So I'm just going to finger press the top and the bottom and then push the pocket pieces through the hole. I'm still going to do that same thing where I hook my thumb and pull out. But now you'll find when you're trying to finger press this flat, those corners are gloriously easy to do. I've done very little to that and it's done. So that's why I like that. Anyway. So this is an 8-inch zip because the pocket piece is 8 by 12. That I can give away those measurements because it's not the size of the pocket in the pattern. And so then I am going to make sure that my zipper closes to the left. So I'm going to close it up, push it 2/3 of the way up. And then I'm just going to lay my zipper pocket over the top, lining up the edge of the fabric here with my white zipper that you can't really see because I recontacted my table. It's like a white pearly color, but it doesn't translate in the video at all. It just kind of looks the same a little bit. All right, so I'm going to stitch around. So I'm going to push that behind there. I'm not going to back stitch yet. I'm starting at the top just for something different. Over the end. Pivot around. I'm going to stop there with my needle down. Unzip just a little bit so I can stitch the last part of the zipper pocket. Pivot back to the start, and I'm going to go through 2 stitches and then back stitch. And that's going to be, it's still a little bit noticeable, not going to lie. Unless you pull the stitches through the back and hand tie them, it is still a little bit noticeable that that's where the start and stop is, but from a distance it's alright. So now your pocket should just fold down to be the size of itself. So I'm going to fold back this half. And I'm going to stitch and back stitch just down the side. Oh, I just run out of bobbin thread again. That was quick. Alright, I am going to pause the video, do another bobbin. Okay, bobbin done. So we're just going to go right back to probably 3 stitches before the bobbin ran out and back stitch. And by stitching over those last few stitches, it's going to lock them in place like a back stitch would. So that's one side. Once I trim off all of the tails. And then we're going to do the other side. So I'm just going to pull this over. I'm going to stitch bottom to top. Doesn't really matter. I just like the bulk of the fabric out of the machine. Back stitch. Trim your tails. Open your zipper. Bam. And then we are up to joining it all. So I'm going to fold this in half to find my center, because this piece isn't in 2 bits like the outside. So we need to actually find the center for this one. And then I'm going to find the center of this. So we just need to find the center of the base, because so long as you've done all your seam allowances even, they will be the same size. Right, so I've trimmed a small amount. And when I say small, it's like really small, and then it still comes out relatively big. Now I want to push these seams towards the base. Now you can top stitch them if you want to, if you want that look inside your bag, but I'm just going to fold them in place so that they stay where I want. Then I'm going to find the center of this part and join it with one of the gusset pieces. It doesn't really matter which one, because it's the same. So it doesn't matter which side you use. And then again, I'm going to put a clip on the base so it faces the center. And that way it can't possibly be wrong. So I'm consciously doing that before I switch to the top. I'm also making sure all of my clips are facing the gusset, because that is also important. It's easier to pull them off while you're stitching. It can be done the other way, but I tend to have to stop. Instead of just pulling them off as I'm stitching, I have to stop to get them off, because they're trickier. That's all. So again, we're clipping towards the bottom, and now I'm at the curvy part. I just want to bring it down and in so that it's all nice and even. You're going to make sure that, so there'll be a little bit of bubbling. I should have explained this in the outline. That's terrible English. There will be bubbles, but they should be outside of the seam allowance. So they're going to be closer to the edge. It doesn't matter if there's some rippling at the edge. You just don't want it right where you're going to stitch. And the fun thing about these is these clip 1/2 inch in. So that is your seam allowance, which I thought was very clever of the clips. Somebody very carefully thought that through. Some of them you can even get and they've got the marking on the inside. So they've got 1/2 and 1/4 inch marking. You should check that. My cheap ones don't, but I'm pretty sure the Clover ones, my all purple ones, I'm pretty sure they have, on the inside of the clip, which you won't be able to see, but on the inside of the clip, they actually have 1/4 and 1/2 inch marked, and it says it on it, which is very clever. So if you were trying to clip a certain seam, those lines would be helpful. But the cheap ones don't have it. Which is fine. I don't necessarily need it. It's just a cool thing to have. Okay, so we're going to, again, stitch with the gusset facing up because that's who we are. Yep. Then I moved it. See how I did there? I moved it. I'm going to put another clip further down so it stays where I want it to till I get it under the machine. It's being stubborn. Right. So to there. We're going to stitch. We're going to back stitch. So see how I can pull the clips off as I'm stitching? I'm also not going at 100 miles an hour so that I can do this. But it just, if they're up the right way, you just gently push on the top just a little bit and it lets go. Which is why I like them facing the right way. Otherwise they require more pressure to come loose. And backstitch. Now these ones, for the lining, you can totally use your zigzag scissors because it's not a stick. See? Look at that. And I haven't forgotten about my magnet. If anyone's screaming at the screen right now, I'm going to install it because I'm just using the normal fold magnets. I'm not using a rivet magnet today. I can install it in a second. So I will be reinforcing where the magnet's going to go. And I do actually have, so any like scrappy little bit of stabilizer, I cut into these like 1-inch squares. I have a heap of them. You will need them for the winch wallet when we get around to it. But they're also really good to reinforce where you put your magnets. So I basically don't throw out any stabilizer. Like, cause like little pieces, even this big, you'll still get like 6 to 8 squares. Which I find awesome. I like minimal waste. You'll never see me cutting off from like the main piece for those things because I cut them as I go and they sit over here. I should actually get a skull dedicated to them. That would be smarter. So any kind of rivet or press stud. So the 201 press studs I also use those to reinforce there. And you don't have to iron them on, really, because they're going to be held. They're just to stop the tearing of the fabric, really. So I don't even iron them on. Sometimes I'll double-sided tape them on so that they stay where I need them to. But yeah, super handy. So I'm up to the curve, so I'm literally pushing my thumb to hold the shape of the curve while I'm trying to clip. And then we'll go in the other direction. So again, we want to make sure that this is pushed towards the center because then both sides are going to match, which is another important thing. Otherwise, you're going to have a twist in the bottom of your bag. And if you sell the bags, the customer will most likely feel it. And if it's for you, it will eventually drive you insane. I'm sorry I'm clipping over here, but my arms hurt doing it over here all the time. I don't have that kind of glorious muscle tone, definition, whatever, to be able to do that. So closer to your body is less strain on your arms. But I also would like you to be able to see what I'm doing. It's like a balancing act. Right, I'm going to also trim off that tail. You'd be surprised at how much all the tails would weigh if you didn't cut them out of your bag. It obviously wouldn't weigh like a kilo or anything, but if you took all the tails and all the excess bits that you trim off your bag, it's considerable. Especially because a lot of people like to take their bags on planes and stuff, and everywhere has a weight limit. It is nice to think of those sorts of things. You might think I'm crazy going, thread doesn't weigh much. I'm like, it doesn't. But look how many tails we've already chopped off. I reckon with all the zigzag scissors and the excess cutting off, I reckon it'll be at least 100 grams that I've cut off so far. Now, I just accidentally, while I was talking, have sewn a pinch in. So we're going to go back and fix that in a second. I saw it, but it was too late. I'd already stitched over it. Because I'm too busy talking about hundreds of grams. Anyway. You should check it out next time. Take all your scraps and weigh them. Okay, so to fix this pinch, it's just been pulled. It's just one stitch that's pinched, but I am actually going to cut out probably 4 stitches so that it's got room to like wiggle back. So I'm going to pull out, oh, that was 5 stitches. Sorry. So I've pulled out the 5 stitches, and so now I can restitch that section without the pinch in it. Now I'm going to go back over like 3 stitches previous and back stitch. And then probably go 3 stitches past, and then that's locked in everything. And the pinch is gone. Now, I obviously could have just left it. It probably wouldn't have mattered, but I would know and it would bug me. So, zigzag scissors again. And at the top edge, again, that's for top stitching purposes, especially important on domestic machines because you don't want to be sewing through all of this if you don't need to. Right, more rubbish. So now let's do the magnet. So I want to find the center, so I'm going to pull it out this way, and I'm going to clip the center. So we're going to need that again in a minute anyway for when we are stitching the bag in. So like that. So there's the center. And now I'm going to measure, oh, I don't know. Where's a ruler? What do I feel comfortable measuring down? Now again, the pattern will have an exact spot for this. I just don't. So we need to allow for stitching and top stitching. So I would just leave an inch automatically. And then I think I'm going to go 2 inches down. Because I don't want it all the way at the top. I want to have like a little bit of a gap. So I'm just going to pull across. And again, so that's to like there. So it's not, you got to remember there'll still be like less at the top, but I don't want it to touch the very, very top. I think that'll be weird. So that's what I'm choosing to do. You are welcome to ignore me on that. You do not have to do anything that I do if you don't want to. So, craft knife. Gasket, which is the little bit that goes on the back for those that don't know what a gasket is. So the first thing I'm going to do is mark it and cut it, and then I'm going to put this on the back and stab through in the opposite direction because I don't want to be drawing on the inside of the bag in case you do something wrong and you see it. So, or you could iron this on because it is technically fusible, so you could just iron it on. That would probably be easier for you. And not necessarily for me though. I'd be trying to iron it onto the silver side of waterproof canvas, and I just don't know how well that would go. The heat that I'd probably need would potentially damage that. So I'm going to use some double-sided tape. I do iron my waterproof canvas, but I do it quickly. I don't just hold the iron on there. I have a feeling it would melt it. So I'm now going to cover that mark like that, and then flip it from the inside and recut the lines. So I can see them from the inside. You can see where the holes are. So you just recut them. And then I'm going to take half of my magnet. Now I don't really care which half I take. I'm not super worried about front and back in this particular instance because it's the inside of a bag. So it's now stabbed through all of it like this. It doesn't even matter if your double-sided tape doesn't hold anymore because it's on. And then I'm going to put it in and bend each side outwards. Now, I know some people bend them in. I don't like that, so I do it outwards. And so now it's installed, but it's reinforced. So it's not just a flimsy piece of waterproof canvas that's holding it all together. If you're worried, you could always put 2 of those or more of that, or I don't know, whatever you want, really. All right, gasket. Now I had to pull the bag so it's uneven because the magnet of the female was pulling the gasket out of alignment, which was a bit rude. Now, if you're using cotton, you'll also want to be putting on some fray stopper glue. That's something I didn't mention. So fray stopper glue, just so it doesn't keep fraying. Also, make sure you're using a sharp knife because you will find if your knife's blunt that you'll get runs in your fabric, which is something else you don't want. So I actually don't change this knife often, but as soon as it puts runs in my fabric, it's time to change the blade. And generally speaking, when you buy them, they come with several replacement blades. So, other side, push it through, flip it over, gasket on, bend it out. You want to try and get it as flat as you can. And so then, ta-da! Magnet shut. We're nearly finished, guys. I don't know how long this video is going for because I had to pause it, but whatever. So, I'm going to use more double-sided tape. These are going to be my square ring holders. Now, I'm not making, you've already seen it, but I'm not making the same handles as the bag, but only because I don't have circle rings in any color. Otherwise, I would have used that hardware to do it. So I really like the handles on the bag. I like the accent circle parts, but I just don't have any. And I don't want to wait another month or so to make this bag because I think it's going to look fabulous today. And I'm impatient, so we're just doing it. All right, so I have folded both sides into the center. Now, if you're on a domestic machine, you might want to consider using the outer fabric with some interfacing to do this. I think I want to stitch the outside edge. That was a very hard decision just then. I'm going to stitch the outside edge. This is more decorative. You don't have to stitch it at all if you don't want to. But if you're trying to practice your top stitching, here's a good place to do it. There's only a very small area, which means small chance of stuffing it up, and even smaller chance of anyone noticing. Alright, last of the hardware, so the bowl can go away. Now, the side where the join is the side that touches the square ring, or round ring, or D ring, or whatever it is that you're doing. World your oyster and all that jazz. Oops. You could also, if you wanted to, just make the handle longer and put it directly into the bag. I mean, it's your design. So, we are going to put the raw edge against the raw edge in the center, which should be right over the zipper tab. So this is going to be a little bit thick because it's got, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers of vinyl, and then like 7 where we top stitched the zipper panels. But that's okay. Alright, turn this in the right way, or out the right way, I guess. Like so. Now, if you care about where your zipper pocket is compared to your bag, pop it in. So I like my zipper pocket always on the back panel of a bag. So I've put the zipper pocket on the side that hasn't got the embroidery, because that's just what I want to do. You don't have to, like, that's something you can think about, but it's also not super important because the other wall has pockets as well, so it doesn't really matter. If there's only one zipper pocket inside the whole bag, I would put it so when you open it from the front, you could see it. But if you've got pockets on all walls, it genuinely does not matter. It's just personal preference after that. So now I'm going to clip this together, and I've got the clips facing the lining because that's the way we're going to sew it, unless you've got a cylinder arm machine and then you do it the opposite way. And I promise I will start doing more videos on that. I'm actually just trying to shrink the table. The table's the same height as this, but then the machine sits on top, so I need a bigger chair to sit at that table, like that machine. And it actually really annoys me. So what I need to do is find someone to grind or weld or whatever they have to do to my table, because the table is just welded together. So I need to get someone to drop it down, I don't know, that much. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're trying to like concentrate on stitching and your hands are like up here trying to stitch, it's really difficult. And awkward. And annoying. Okay. Look at that. Looks weird, but that's okay. So, we're on a joining stitch length. I'm just going to peel back this top so I can get to here and start stitching. I don't want to start stitching in a corner. It's always a terrible idea, people. No, about there. Right. So we're going to stitch and back stitch to lock in your stitches. And then around we go. Now all the seam allowances are in the pattern, or you can make them up. I know that sounds really dodgy, but as a general rule, so long as you're doing it evenly around the top, it won't necessarily matter until it comes to the top stitching, because you will need to cut out all the excess to be able to top stitch. So I'm going very slowly over this side because, oops, I just snapped the thread again. That is where the bulk is. And I had a sneaking suspicion it was going to do that. You could also slow down your machine so you don't have to concentrate as much on your foot, if that's an option. I don't mess with the motor on here. It's just set to what it's set to. So I'm going to go back a little bit and go back over my stitches that actually worked. 1, 2, 3, and then back again. And then to there. And then we're going to angle our way out and continue. So again, I'm getting up to that edge, so we're going to pivot it. We just continue squashing the bag down out of the way. It won't damage the bag to do it, and if you've got foam, it's going to bounce back even better. We're also going to do a final iron from the inside with my little craft iron, so that I don't damage any of the vinyl, but that will also get out all the creases, so it's fine. So now that we've stitched that, you want some scissors, and you want your vinyl cutting scissors, because this is going to be bulky. We're going to cut as much of that bulk off as you can at those ends. Because if it's not in your top stitching, then it won't matter. See how thick all that is? Guaranteed. 100 grams cut out of the bag. Okay, so then you just wanted to check, make sure that everything looks good. I'm happy. So, I'm going to pull out the lining. I'm going to stick my hand into the zipper pocket. Now, if you did foam in this bag, what you may want to do, and I should have told you this before, but I've only just thought of it, is the bottom of the bag, you could just leave open like a chunk. So basically from on the base, from the stitching to the stitching across there, what you could do is you could leave that whole section open and just quickly pull it through. But because there's no bulk in this, so I shouldn't have a whole lot of trouble trying to turn it through because it's thinner. But if I had had bag foam in this bag, I would have left the bottom of the bag open to be able to turn it through easier. I do that on a bag-to-bag basis. Not all bags need the whole bottom open, although this would be done already if I had it. So I'm just easing it out. See, that was still pretty quick though. And then I'm going to stick my hand back in so that I can push out all of the edges. Like that. See, how good does that look? And then once I'm happy that I've pulled everything out, we are going to tuck under those raw edges on the zipper pocket. So I literally just tuck it under, and then you can even finger crease it like that. Stitch, back stitch. And close up your zipper pocket. Trim off your tails. Tuck that back in. You can zip it up if you want to. And then we're just going to tuck the whole lining into the bag. Easy, so do that. Grab a side ring and then just push. Does that not look epic? Right. So, one last thing. We need to top stitch. So, what I actually would prefer to do, now that I've thought about it for 2 seconds, is I want to stitch it from the outside. So I'm actually just going to squish the bag because there's no foam, I can squish it. If you've got foam in your bag, then you're probably wanting to turn it inside out and then top stitch it. So I've increased my top stitch length to 4, so it looks cool. Now, because we cut out most of the bulk at the side here, that should be pretty easy to stitch across. And then I'm just going to slowly bring the bag around. And I'm top stitching at 1/8 of an inch. But if you're new to top stitching, or if the bag's being difficult, do it at a full 1/4 inch. Because I allowed both options when I installed the magnetic clasp. So you'll find that it's not even close in the way. You don't need to think about it while you're top stitching because it's not an issue. So you just want to make sure that it's sitting right on the edge of the vinyl and the waterproof lining. And the hardest bits are going to be those ends because of all the bulk. But I did cut out most of it, so I'm not really having all that much trouble. You always want to stop with your needle down so that you can readjust the bag. I know this looks super awkward what I'm doing, but all I had to do instead was turn the bag inside out. But this is actually helping me get that nice crease on the edge. So I'm quite okay with it. And up, back stitch, trim your tails. We just need a handle. See, and the bag stands up by itself because I've used vinyl. But again, you could also add fleece if you just wanted to give it an extra little something. Or you could add the foam, like I said. It just depends on what finish you're going for. How firm do you want it? So I'm also going to need to do a Tory squish on all of these corners. Especially where the embroidery design is, because it's kind of slightly curving around that edge, which I'm not super happy about. You get the idea. Right, handle. So I'm just doing one 24-inch handle. I'm just going to do the vinyl by itself. You could also take the fabric accent and stick it on top. If you've got the patience, you could do some cool embroidery stuff down the handle. I do not have that kind of patience. So I'm going to make sure that these fold directly together so there is no gap. You don't want any gap in this at all. And then we're just going to move along slowly. You want it to be perfectly butted up against each other. And you want to try and get it as close to the center as possible. So that's why the whole pinch together and then push kind of works really well for this, because it centers itself, which is awesome. Oops. Yeah, and that went a little bit crooked. That was my own fault. I'm going to start from the other end. Make sure that that end is nice and squared off. And then bring it back the other way. There's a couple of cool things that we can do with this. I'm thinking of being fancy because it's what I do. So we're going to need a ruler and we're going to need a water resistant pencil or chalk pen if you're not using white, or if you've got a non-white chalk pen. Okay, I need to go and find a water marker. I've done this once before in a video when I made a handle like this. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the center there. So the center of each end. I'm going to mark this on the right side up because this is a friction texture, so it will just come off. It's not a big deal. So then I'm going to mark got 24, 3, so 3/8 of 24. So I'm going to mark 1.5 inches down. I just need to make sure it goes into the 24. So I'm going to mark every 1.5 inches. Yes, this is time consuming, but it's going to look super cool, so why not? So you can make up whatever number, as long as it fits in your thing. So because I've got 24 inches, 8 3s are 24, which means I can divide 3 in half. That's how I got to that point. Maths. Sewing is all about maths. Every 1.5 2.5 inches. And I'm just marking it really, like right on the edge, just a little bit, just so I can see it. Doesn't need to be like a full line across or anything dramatic. Just a little bit. And this is lifted, which is disturbing me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rub it on the edge of the table. Make sure that crease stays where I'm telling it to. Now the other reason I'm doing these so small is because there is a join in the center and I want to make sure that it's going to stay closed. See, look at that. Nailed it. So, now I've got these tiny little marks all the way along the edge, every 1.5 inches, and it's not focusing. Hold on. There we go. Every 1.5 inches. So I'm going to start with my needle at the center point that I made on the end. And then I'm going to stitch to the edge where I put that mark. Then I'm going to zigzag to the next mark. And this is going to make like this really cool diamond pattern straight down the center. And then I'm going to go to this side. And then zigzag back. Basically we're making zigzags, but by marking them they're going to be even, which I think is important for what we're doing today. If you're really good at eyeballing angles, you could just do this without the marks, but I would not recommend it. If you get wonky zigzags, it's not going to look cool. Needle down, angle back. So I am still doing a cool strap, just not as cool as the one in the pattern. You also want to have excellent foot control, because I'm only doing like 8 stitches or whatever. But with all these stitches, because I've done them really, really close, I could have also done 1 inch. 1 inch would have worked, but I would have been here forever. So when I get to this last one, I want to come to the center point to make the diamond. Because that's obviously what we're trying to do. And then I can pivot all the way around. And get to there. And then we're going to do the same thing. So we're just going to crisscross opposite all the way down. And as you can see, we're starting to get this really cool zigzag pattern. And the diamond at the end is a little bit bigger, but that also won't matter because we're going to rivet it down anyway. Or stitch it down. I haven't actually decided yet. See, stuff can be exciting even when it is plain. I definitely wouldn't recommend doing this without marking it though. You could even draw the actual lines if you can't eyeball from like a straight line from there to there. Not gonna lie though, my leg foot is starting to hurt from all the control. Okay. How fun's that? It's got like this really cool diamond pattern now. Now if I wanted to, I could stitch a line down the center as well, or across the edges, or you know, you can go as crazy as you want. I'm probably going to just stop it there though. And I'm going to fold this up and I'm going to stitch that down. I want that stitched down. instead of rivets, I think. So I'm just going to line it up there. So I'm lining it up with the center point of one of the other bits so that it's going to look even. And then I'm going to swivel the whole bag. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm not going to do that at all. And a back stitch there. And then I've made an absolute mess of the back, which is actually the front. So I just need to trim out all of those hang stitches. It's like a hang nail, but not a nail. Right. And then I'm going to come and I'm going to stitch right up next to that bit. So I'm just going to have two little lines instead. And then I'm going to bring this around. Now this is obviously just a little shoulder strap. You could do it longer if you wanted to, or whatever floats your boat really. But it's long enough, right? So it's going to sit down. But if you wanted it longer, just make it 28 inches. I suppose it really depends on how long you like your straps. Alright, and then we're going to lift up and come over here. Stitch again. And I didn't trim it off this time because it's going to be easier to just trim that one little jump stitch. I call them jump stitches when they're little. And voila, your bag's done. You've got these cool little like side pockets you can shove smaller stuff in. So if you were asthmatic or something, you put your puffer in there. Or if you've got like a program, if you've gone to the football and you've got a football program, you can shove it in there until you want it again. And it magnets shut and looks fabulous. So there you go, guys. Alright, I am off and I will see you guys all tomorrow.